Hello, this is ITU Telecom TV. We're in Cairo in Egypt at ITU Telecom Africa 2008, and I'm talking with Dr. Norman Lewis, who is the chairman of the ITU Telecom Forum, and also, with his other hat on, the Chief Strategy Officer with a company called Wireless Grids Corporation. Norman, we seem to follow one another around the world. I see you everywhere we go.
Absolutely.
Either I'm stalking you or you're stalking me. I don't know what it is.
People are talking about us now.
Anyway, good to see you again. Let's begin at the beginning. What's your take on the show here? You've been there in the sessions, you've been chairing stuff. What's the substantive issues been about?
The show has been, I think, has been a real success. I think the Egyptian government has done a fantastic job. They've put on a great show. Everything has been pretty good. I think the forum I'm particularly pleased with because for me the key theme that has come out is that things are really happening in Africa. There's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of entrepreneurship, there's quite a lot of innovation on regulation side of things, and I get a feeling for the first time that Africans are really getting down to it now, and they're not just doing things, they're doing things in new ways that I think people are very ignorant about, and ways that I think have got immense importance for beyond Africa itself. And that's, for me, has been the key thing that has come out. And indeed, when we designed the program, that specifically was the spirit within which we were thinking of it. We were thinking, normally when you come to Africa and you start talking about Africa, it's always about problems. And everybody, particularly in the West, thinks that they know what's best for Africa. What we see at this event is we've got Africans getting up and talking about some real success stories of new things that are happening on deployment of WiMAX networks, of companies that are deploying telecom services who are profitable on a $2 ARPU, which is remarkable. And they are doing things that I think the rest of the world could really learn from. In terms of the innovations around their business models, around the way that they're deploying technologies, etc. And that, for me, has been the most exciting thing. I have met a vast number of remarkable young people. We have the Youth Forum as well as young entrepreneurs and young new executives in these emerging companies that no one have ever heard of until now. And it gives me immense faith and optimism about where this continent is going now. So it's been really exhilarating from that point of view.
Moving away from your ITU commitments for a moment, looking at wireless grids, the technology there, what can that bring to the table to help emerging and developing nations?
You have to understand about wireless grids. It's not a grid computing in the sense of across Africa. This is more on a personal, localized space. It's a software solution that allows you to connect all of your devices that can connect to an IP network to mesh together and form what we call personal infrastructure. So to give you a very simple example, I've got pictures on my mobile phone, I want to look at them on my TV. I can select that TV from a screen, drop the pictures onto them, and the pictures appear on my TV. I'm not loading the pictures up anywhere. There's no client-server architecture. It's an ad hoc distributed network, and it can take advantage of any carrier technology. So it could be Wi-Fi, WiMAX, Bluetooth, infrared, even fixed Ethernet cable, as long as everything can be seen by an IP network. So why I think this kind of technology is applicable in Africa is for two reasons. One, it's extremely low cost. It's a very small footprint, it just needs to be put onto these devices, and you solve the problem of connecting devices. So the whole networking within, say, schools or even small offices or homes, as they get more and more of these kinds of devices into them, takes all of the pain out of that because there's no wires. I'm assuming that the devices that they have has got some kind of wireless connectivity. Now, of course, we're talking about a certain niche of the market here. This is not, at this point in time, is not something that's a mass deployable solution. But what's particularly relevant about this is that what this does is it creates what we call personal infrastructure. All your devices, all your content, all your applications essentially are linked to you wherever you go. If you've got access to the internet, It doesn't matter if it's fixed or wireless or whatever, you've got access to all of this content. You could drag a file from a computer that's sitting in your office and drop it onto the icon of a printer that's sitting in your friend's home and print the document and not have to worry about the file being transferred to his server or whatever. What's great about this is that it enables the end user to start using their devices and innovating themselves as to how they want to find solutions to the things they want to do. So it's very much about the end user. It's about innovation at the edge, which I see now is really what's starting to take off in Africa. And we know that will happen. The more Africa sorts itself out in terms of basic infrastructure, of providing those IP networks, the more that there's mobile devices, cheaper laptops, cheaper computing power into the hands of ordinary users, we know that we're going to see a real spur of innovation and user-driven innovation, because the users are always the best innovators, because they're the ones that have got the problem, and they will use the technology in ways that we don't envisage. What we're doing with wireless grids is to put this into the hands of people and say, innovate, solve your problems, and we will see what you're doing and we will help you solve those, because once we see the kinds of things they're doing, we'll try and help develop those kinds of applications. You know, you made a great example about e-banking. You know, look at what happened in Africa with minutes. Prepaid minutes become a currency. Now, I can tell you, the operators didn't think of that. They didn't plan that. Just like the operators in Europe never thought of texting. You know, they were talking about WAP and the customers were doing texting. So the same kind of dynamic is happening here. And why I'm excited about wireless grids is that I think it's a technology, a software that will enable that kind of inventiveness to take off. And that's why I'm excited about it. I think it's got a huge potential for the future.
And as chairman of the ITU Telecom Forum, do you think this time we're seeing a real dawn in Africa as far as ICT is concerned, and not just another false one?
I would say definitely. I think there are things happening on the level of the cooperation that's starting to happen across the continent in terms of infrastructures, where you're having, you know, the kind of cable, submarine cable, the ability to wire Africa is advancing quite rapidly now. I think we've been talking about this for some time. We're beginning to see it happen. And we're beginning to see what happens when you do that. When you know, we've seen how mobile has grown in Africa. And, you know, that's very, very exciting, because it means that, you know, there's still significant barriers. There's a long way to go. There's no doubt about it, because, you know, mobile is going up. The big challenge is what you're going to do about internet. And about, you know, and there you've got much more significant barriers, because it's an economic and social problem insofar as people don't have the resources to buy the equipment, you know, PCs, etc. That's all a bit more expensive. But there are solutions that are coming. There are cheaper devices. There are a whole number of things that are happening. And I think that, you know, because innovation really is based upon people solving problems, necessity will ensure that this start that we have now and we see happening before is going to be a really sustainable basis upon which this will gather momentum. And I'm very optimistic about it. I think it's very different. I don't think we're going to be talking about Africa as a basket case any longer. I think we're going to be learning from Africa.
And of course, the remorseless behemoth that is the ITU keeps on rolling, and you'll next set up camp in Bangkok in September at ITU Telecom Asia. What are going to be the main themes there, do you think? And will there be any carryovers from what we've seen here in Africa?
Well, it'll be different to Africa for one fundamental reason, that whilst you have similar problems in some of the countries, you also have in Asia the most advanced, you know, technology connected countries in the world. You know, South Korea, Japan, rapidly getting there, China, India. You know, these are phenomenal success stories, and the things that are happening in those markets are just extraordinary. I won't go into that. You'll have to come to Asia Telecom to find out about that. But what I think is exciting about this is that we are seeing things happening now in those markets that in fact are the future. You know, everyone goes on about, you know, that you can't invent the future, or that the future is actually here, but it's just unevenly distributed. I think that's very, very true. Take a country like Korea, that to me is like the world's living laboratory of the kinds of things we're going to see happening in the future as more and more of us gain that kind of infrastructure and that kind of level of connectivity. So our program that we've designed is to try and take all of that into account, plus address the very significant challenges that exist at the more developing level, the development question across some of the Asian countries, which are very, very far behind. So there's a slight tension there. But what I'm very excited about in Asia is that we really will be showcasing, and the themes of that, what we're developing, it's along the lines of there's a new generation and there's new value and new values that are emerging in Asia, which I think is really going to, is the vanguard of what's going to happen elsewhere. And it's very interesting that, I'll pose the question to you. I'll interview you. Have you ever heard of QQ?
No.
QQ is Chinese. It's an internet-based instant messaging social network. It's the largest social network in the world. Over 300 million active accounts. That's bigger than the population of the US. No one's heard of it in the West. We all talk about Facebook, we all talk about MySpace, and we're all going on about that. And the most significant thing about QQ is that last year they made $240 million operating profit on $500 million revenue. Profit. And you know what? 13% of that was based on advertising. You know where the rest of it came from? From mobile and from digital goods. Now, digital goods, virtual money, those kinds of things, that is what's being pioneered in Asia. And that they are way ahead of everybody. We see this happening in Second Life in the West, but in Asia, you've got this in China in QQ, you've got it in Korea, in Cyworld, to the point where the central bank in China is warning that QQ coins are threatening to destabilize the yuan, because now people are starting to use that virtual money to buy proper things and exchange. Just as we've seen in Africa, people are using minutes to start purchasing and sending money in a secondary banking system. So that's phenomenally exciting. So if we look at that and we look at what's happening around gaming and the behaviors around the kind of online culture, particularly with young people, because of course in China most of the people on these things are young, we are seeing something very, very exciting. And I'm hoping that through this that we will make this much more of an awareness in the West, and we will carry this kind of agenda through to World Telecom in Geneva in 2009. So we're building a momentum here of really trying to bring the best, as well as not underestimating the challenges, but looking at the success stories, the things that we really want to populate to make people more and more conscious of, that they will come to these events and really learn something new, meet the companies that are doing this, meet the pioneers. And we always think about pioneers in this space as coming from MIT, Silicon Valley, that's who we think of. I think Asia's got a big story to tell, and I think it's got relevance way, way beyond Asia.
Norman, I'm sure we'll meet again somewhere along the way, on the plane on the way home. I wouldn't be surprised if I opened a wardrobe and you were in it somewhere. But we'll meet again in due course. If not before, certainly in Asia. Until then, thanks very much indeed.
You're welcome. Thank you.